Okay, so we are going to work on our genetics worksheet now together. We will not do every one of these questions. There are a few we did not cover this semester. That is okay. I'll let you know which ones to skip. But if you will please pull out that worksheet, we're going to start off with question number 1. And if you'll look, it says, question 1, what are the possible gametes that could be produced by an individual who is big P, big big R, little r, and these are unlinked? So let's go ahead and get started on number 1. So we're looking for the possible gametes of big P, big P, and big R, little r, and these are unlinked, which means they're going to go through independent assortment. They're not close together on the same chromosome. They're going to sort independently. So the only options we can give for P are the big ones. So no matter how many eggs or sperm are produced, that parent has to give a big P. Now the R's are a different story. You could have a big R to go with the big P, or a little r. Now, since this is homozygous, that's all there is. These are the only possible options for gametes from this individual. Let's move on to number 2. We're going to determine, we're not going, I'll show you the product rule real quick. It's not too difficult. Use the product rule to determine the chance of obtaining an offspring with a genotype. So we're going to be looking for big R, big Y, little y. So this is our question. From a dihybrid cross between parents with the genotype big R, big Y, little y. I'm going to draw my little y's with a nice big hook on the end so we can keep them straight. So these are going to be our parents, and we're going to cross them. Now, the product rule, as long as these are independent and they are not linked, allows us to avoid those big, nasty dihybrid crosses you saw in the lectures. So what we can do for the product rule is we calculate each of these alleles individually. So we're going to put dad's genes here, or dad's alleles. There's mom. If you don't know, this symbol with the arrow pointing up represents a male. This one going down is a female. I was always told to remember that's like a lady always keeps her legs crossed, and that's how I was taught that as a child. But anyway, there are dad's alleles. Here are mom's alleles, and let's just throw in our Punnett square. Whoops. See if I can draw a straight line for us. Apparently not today. Alright, so when we cross these, we're going to look in this first square and see what alleles are going to meet up there. It'll be big R, then big R, little r, big R, little r, and little r, little r. Now, we'll do the same thing for the alleles for Y. We have dads, we have moms, and so we're going to do 2 simple monohybrid crosses. So to do these, remember, you just look and see what's coming down from the column and what meets over here, and that's what goes in the box. Now, what are we looking for? We're looking for big R, big R. How often does that happen? It happens 2 out of every 4 times. And then we're going to look for big Y, little y, and that happens 2 out of every 4 times. Now, according to the product rule, as long as these alleles or genes are not linked on the same chromosome, we can multiply the results from 2 monohybrid crosses to get our answer. So 2/4 times 2/4, you multiply across the top, and you get 4. You multiply across the bottom, and you get 16, which is 4 out of 16s, or 1/4 of the time you would have an individual who is heterozygous, or big R, little y, heterozygous for both traits. Your other option here, of course, is to do the big, nasty dihybrid cross. I'm not going to mess with that right now. I may show you one in a little bit, but this is not the time. Alright, so let me get a fresh sheet ready. Alright, let's move on to question number 3. So, we have wild-type canaries are yellow. This wild-type means what is most commonly found. A dominant mutant allele of the color gene that's designated W causes white feathers. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. It's dominant, a big W will be white. It doesn't really matter that it's a mutant. Inheriting 2 dominant alleles is lethal to the embryo. So getting 2 dominant versions is lethal, which means they're going to be dead. If a yellow canary is crossed with a white canary, so let's pause for a minute. What must the yellow look like? If big W is white and it's dominant, then we'll have to have little w to get a yellow canary. A live white one must be big W, little w, because in this case your dominant allele would mask your recessive, so white would cover up the yellow. But this is the only way to get a white canary that's alive. If you get the homozygous white, it's dead. So to have a white canary that can breed, it's got to be heterozygous. So if a yellow canary is crossed with a white canary, so let's say there's our yellow canary. We're going to cross it with a living white canary because you can't cross dead things. What is the probability the offspring will be yellow? And what is the probability the offspring will be white? This is a simple monohybrid cross. We do our 2 little w's from this parent, a big W and a little w. So we're big W, little w. We're still in the big W column. Little w, 2 little w's, and 2 more little w's. So the question was, what is the probability the offspring will be yellow? Yellow, like I said, if you look over here, is homozygous recessive. We have 2 copies of that, so there's a 50% chance, or 2 out of 4, that it will be a yellow canary. And white, we have 2 individuals here that could be white, so again that's a 50% chance, or 2 out of 4, that any offspring produced by these 2 individuals will be white. Alright, let's move on now to question number 4. It's a bit of a big one, so we will get a fresh sheet out. So, a man and a woman have dark eyes, dark hair, and freckles. The genes for these traits are on separate chromosomes, so this is independent assortment. The woman is heterozygous for each of these traits, but the man is homozygous. The dominance relationships of the alleles are as follows. So, the big B is going to be dark eyes, and the little b will be light, or blue. Then we're going to have the big H, and that will be dark hair. And the little h is blonde. And then we have the big F is for freckles. And the little f is for no freckles. So let's go ahead and write out the woman. It said that she is heterozygous for each of the traits, which means she has 1 of each version of the allele, so big B, big H, big F, little f. And it says that the man is homozygous for each of the traits, and they both have dark eyes, dark hair, and freckles, so he has to have big B, big H, and big F, big F. So, We're going to now calculate what is the probability that their child will share their parents' phenotype. Remember, phenotype is the actual appearance. So what is the probability the child will have dark hair, dark eyes, and freckles? Now, we can do a massive Punnett square here. I would rather not do it. I would like to use the product rule because remember I said you can do that as long as they are independent and they are not linked. You can do a use the product rule and do just some monohybrid crosses. So we're going to start off here talking about the eye color. We have big B, big B, big B, whoops, big B, then big B, little b, big B, little b. We'll do the same thing for the hair color. There is the mother's genotype and the father's genotype. We'll just fill that in very quickly. And then we're going to do the same thing for the freckles. You should be noticing that all of these ratios are coming out exactly the same for being homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, or heterozygous. Alright, so there we are. Now, what is the probability the child will share the parent's phenotype? So, we're talking about dark eyes first. And let me just go ahead and grab a different color very quickly. Get that out of my way. Let me just move this box. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and say that will be brown, and we'll put a brown marker here. We'll have brown eyes, brown eyes, brown eyes, and blue. And then we will have dark hair, whoops, dark hair and dark hair. I'm sorry, this would not be blue. I was making things up and not looking. These would all be dark. Excuse me. I don't know where my mind went. And then we'll have freckles, and freckles, freckles, and freckles. Now, what is the probability that the child will have dark eyes? It is going to be 4 out of 4. The probability of having dark hair is 4 out of 4. And the probability of having freckles is also 4 out of 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. And 16 times 4 will be 64. So the probability of having a child whose phenotype is like the parents is 100%. Now B, what is the probability the child will share the same genotype as their mother? And the mother is heterozygous for everything. So how many ways could the child be what is the probability the child will be heterozygous for eye color? It is 2 out of 4, or you can write 1/2. It is also 2 out of 4 chances of the child being heterozygous for hair color. And 2 out of 4 chances the child will have freckles and be heterozygous. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8 out of 64. And if you break that down, that will be 1 out of 8. And this is the probability of having the same genotype as the mother. Now, for the same genotype as the father, which is all dominant, I'm going to go ahead and do 1/2 here. You have a 1 out of 2 chance for being big B, 1 out of 2 for being big H, and 1 out of 2 for being big F, and that will be 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. You have a 1 in 8 chance of having the same genotype as the father, but a 100% chance of having the same phenotype as both. So that is how your product rule continues to work. Alright, we'll move right on along now to question number 5. If I can get my pen to work, there we go. We're going to actually skip number 5. If you are just curious how to solve this problem, please let me know. I'll be happy to go over it. We did not cover incomplete dominance this semester just because of time constraints. So I'll be skipping 5. Unfortunately, as much as I love blood type problems, we will also be skipping number 6. Alright, so sadly we are going to skip actually several more questions, which I absolutely hate to do. We're going to skip 7 on through 9. I'm just going to pick up here at question number 10. Now, what I want us to look at is if a male cat has short hair, oops, be an itty bitty male symbol, he has short hair, a stubby tail, and extra toes, and then you have a female cat. And that female cat has long hair or long tail and extra toes. The genes for the alleles are as follows. The big L is long hair, or short hair. The little L is long hair. And I don't know who decided on these allele symbols. I actually borrowed this problem from a different professor. I hate how this was written. I need to change it. But anyway, so the male has short hair, and that is dominant and has the big L. Then the female has long hair as well, so she must have a big L. He has a stubby tail, and she has a long tail. So if you look, a long tail is recessive. So for her to display the recessive trait, she must be homozygous recessive because there's nothing there blocking it. So we know for sure she has 2 little M's. Then he has extra toes, which is dominant, and she has extra toes as well, which is also dominant. So what we have now is we do not know what they have in each of these blank spots. They could be homozygous dominant, or they could be heterozygous, and we won't know until we see some offspring from them. So let's move on to the rest of the question. The 2 cats have kittens. One kitten has long hair. Okay, that's possible so far. A long tail. And long tail was the little M. So let's just stop right now. If the kitten's going to have a long tail, and Dad's is short, and Mom's is long, but that's recessive, what does Dad have to have in order for this kitten, if it's going to have, if it's going to have a long tail, it must be little m, little m. It can get 1 little m from Mom. Where does the other little m have to come from? From Dad. So we now know that Dad has a little m here. Then we have another, it has a long tail and has no extra toes. Now wait a minute. What is no extra toes going to look like? Right, it's recessive. So that must mean it's little p, little p. Both parents have extra toes, but the offspring doesn't. That means it has to get a little p from each parent. So the parents must be heterozygous for the number of toes. And then we have the third kitten has short hair, a long tail, and no extra toes. We've already discussed the long hair and the normal toes, and now we're discussing a kitten that has short hair. Oops, we missed one back there. That's what I forgot. This was the long tail. So that kitten's not giving us anything new if we had been paying attention, because kitten 1 had long hair. And I wasn't paying enough attention to catch that. So the long hair is going to be little l, and that means we have to have gotten those little l's from each of the parents. So the question goes on to say, what is the genotype of the father? Well, we have that now. The father must be heterozygous for hair length because one of his offspring had long hair, which is recessive. He must be heterozygous for his tail length because one of the offspring had the long tail, which is recessive. And he also must be heterozygous for the number of toes, and that P there is standing for polydactyl, but because one of his offspring had a normal number of toes. So now we know that the father must be heterozygous for all three traits. Thank you so much. If you will please take a look, I will have an additional worksheet for you to practice on so you can make sure you really understand these. You're welcome to use this sheet. Don't look at your answers. Try working through it and see if you come up with the right answer. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Please contact me if you have any questions.